SubhanAllah. There's a few reflections that I want to have on this story about Sayyidina Yusuf and Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama in connection to the woman asking Sayyidina Yusuf asking Sayyidina Musa to be his companion in paradise, and to aspects I want to discuss about the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam and the beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama. And so I want to start actually by just talking about their beauty. We know that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was absolutely beautiful, so handsome. And know that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama was handsome. And we have to come to realize, and we will come to realize, that the beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama was actually greater and more perfected than the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. How? I'm going to get into that in a moment. But first, let's look at this hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama, he describes the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. Prophet alayhi salam goes on the Isra and the Mi'raj, and as he's ascending in these stages of the heavens, he sees a variety of prophets, and on the third heaven, he sees Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, and he says, I found Joseph who had been given half of beauty. Given half of beauty. Because we know that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was so beautiful. But the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was very different than the perfected beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama. The beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was a beauty that incited very strong feelings in the heart. What do I mean by that? Zulaykha, the wife of the Aziz, she sees Sayyidina Yusuf and it incited her, excited her. His beauty became a fitna. It became a trial for people, something that many people couldn't handle. To the extent that one of them, in the case that Allah describes to us in the Quran al-Kareem of Zulaykha, the wife of Aziz, she wanted to transgress herself and transgress against Allah, transgress against Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam by calling him to that which she shouldn't have been calling him to the extent that she even attacked him to try to force him, to lure him to be in that relationship with her. She couldn't handle it. And then when the news got out, she brought the ladies together and she brings Sayyidina Yusuf, and again, his beauty is so stark. It's so jarring in some ways that you can say that these ladies were there cutting potatoes with a knife. All of a sudden, what happens? Sajjad, what do? They cut their hands. It's a beauty that doesn't, almost takes them out of their senses. And they're like, oh my God, this is not a human being. This is an angel in front of us. Like, he's out of this world. And so his beauty was one that caused others to be tried and tested. But the beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi was more perfected than that. The beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi brought into people's heart a sense of what we call jalal and jamal at the same time, perfectly balanced. A sense of majesty and a sense of beauty and love wrapped together. So people could interact with him while still being awestruck, but it didn't incite them to do things or say things that would be out of character. And Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu ardah, he describes the beauty of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He describes the immense character of Sayyidina Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. And he says, whomever saw him from afar, he says, whomever came across him unexpectedly was in awe of him. You become in awe. Wow. It doesn't incite you to move into places and spaces you shouldn't be. You're in awe, like, wow. And whomever spent time with him fell in love with him. Perfectly balanced. And the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim, they describe this perfect balance of the beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa. And so, Sajjad, if we can bring up the first hadith, which I believe is this from the Shama'il of Sayyidina Rasulullah. Yeah, he said, Naam, Sayyidina Jabir. He says, I saw Allah's Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi on a cloudless night, and he was wearing a red suit of clothing. So I started looking at him as well as the moon, for he indeed is more beautiful in my opinion than the moon. You can imagine Sayyidina Jabir. He's in the presence of Sayyidina Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, and he's seeing the moon, a full moon on a cloudless night. You know, how many of us have seen the moon and you stare at the moon? Like I tell my children when it's nighttime, sometimes when I'm outside and I'm looking up, come outside, come look at the beauty of the moon. And we all stare at the beauty of the moon. Sajjad, have you ever done that? And you're just in awe. You're like, it's so beautiful. Subhanallah. But can you stare at the sun? You can't stare at the sun. The beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf is like the sun. You can't stare at it. It's going to blind you. But the beauty of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi is more perfected than the moon. Because Sayyidina Jabir is saying, I'm staring at the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, then I'm looking at the moon. And then I'm looking at Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, I'm looking at the moon. He's more beautiful. Oh, that complete, perfected beauty. Just to see him once, alayhi salatu wasalam. Sayyidina Jabir. And then there's the narration. I think this is from the Shama'il of Sayyidina Rasulullah, Imam al-Tirmidhi. Everyone should have this book, or maybe it's not, I'm not sure. In Abu Hurairah, na'am. Look what he says. Allahu Akbar. These are the people that spent time with Al-Habib al-A'zam alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, he says, I have seen nothing more beautiful than the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wasallam. There's nothing more beautiful than Sayyidina Rasulullah. Looked as if the sun were pursuing its course in his face. His face, what he's saying here is his face, alayhi salatu wasalam, his noble face, alayhi salatu wasalam, was so radiant. And I have seen no one who walked more quickly than the Messenger of God sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa for it seemed as if the earth was being contracted for him. We would exert ourselves, but he was unruffled, he was relaxed. Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he walked with purpose. The Sahaba said we had a tough time keeping up. And so you see from this, he says his face was shining beauty. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So his beauty, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, was a perfected and balanced beauty. Whereas the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, it caused individuals to do things that were a fitna, a trial for them. And that's why he, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, is the most beautiful creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah bless us all to have that one look at Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.